There is two different types of writing, it would seem to me. There is what I would call the vertical and the horizontal. Um, in music, you might describe it as melodic against harmonic writing, and in theology, philosophy, we could call it about the difference between sacred and secular time. But in principle, they're the same thing, which is how we experience um, the unfolding of a creative work. Now, if we take a melody, for instance, this happens and must happen over time. One note follows another note. And to understand the melody, to kind of comprehend the melody, to appreciate it, we have to experience it over time to its completion. But in a chord, in harmonic music, we're actually listening to the relationships between tones in a moment, and it's a more vertical experience. Now, in terms of sacred and secular, I mean, secular simply means time in its its ongoing duration that we experience that, whereas the sacred means that certain ideas of what is sacred means they are happening at all in all time. Now, with writing, it's more complicated than this, because by nature we read through time, and to create a kind of harmonic sense in writing is very difficult. Now, poetry tends to do it best. That's the vehicle for that kind of expression, because the writing is so contracted and compact and condensed that actually we're looking for a different experience compared to narrative or story. But literary novels try to do this. It is about creating a harmonic sense in our prose. So the reader is not particularly interested in what's about to happen next. They're not interested in finding out and having completed a particular story or a particular plot point. They're thinking that they're having experience inside the prose. And the more levels inside that prose, the more vertical experience. I can think of many great writers. I mean, James Salter does this. Proust does this. The very brilliant, I can't remember his name, Malcolm Lowry does this. And there are obviously many more. But my sense is that we have to discriminate between these two when we talk about literary novels and other novels. And I want to talk about this for a second, which has been shortlisted for the Man Booker Prize. And it is a perfectly agreeable read. It's sort of, what's the word? It's gripping. It's kind of interesting. It's got historical detail. It's set in a world that I don't know very much about, the crofting community in northern Scotland in the middle of the 19th century. There are kind of hierarchies that are interesting. There is a classic baddie, and there is a classic setup, and we know what the crime is, and we know who committed it. And really, this book is a why done it. And really, from the first page onwards, that's all we're being asked to experience. And it's really just a journey from 3 murders were committed by this person, and I'm going to give you 3 narratives, and at the end, you're going to be left with a sense of, why it was done or whatever. So, and at no point, apart from merely being taken into this community, and I would say not in a wholly successful way anyway, are we experiencing anything beyond that? And I feel that disqualifies it for the Man Booker Prize if the Man Booker Prize is about literary fiction. Now, the reason the Man Booker Prize needs to be about literary fiction is there is no other prize in the UK for that. There are prizes for sort of general fiction, there are genre prizes, and literary fiction, the Man Booker needs to raise the exposure, the profile of literary fiction to a broader audience, and therefore giving them a novel that essentially could find its way onto their radar by other means is to do a disservice to the prize's ethos and to literary fiction. Now, there's a complication here because I'm a great supporter of small presses, and this is a tiny small press in Scotland. And for that reason, I'm pleased that they will get revenue. That means that they can publish more books. But on the other hand, it is revenue that will, as much as I know, will go to publish more books like this, and not necessarily support difficult experimental and less financially viable work. And so for that reason, I have to set aside my support of small presses in these terms, and say that I feel that along with Eileen, which I think has more pretensions to literary fiction but fails than this feels to me as though it's a kind of interest. It's snuck on because it's kind of interesting setting. It's got some interesting devices, but really it's just a high concept literary historical genre novel, crime novel, and for that reason, I feel if it wins, I will be really fucking annoyed, basically.